The origin of Dawn Ridge. Time period, late 1700s, early 1800s, when the Cape Colony was growing and the British were tightening control over southern Africa. Gina's early life. Gina was born among the Amakosa in the Eastern Cape. Known in his youth for his keen mind and restless curiosity, he learned not only the traditions of his people but also the mechanics of European tools from settlers he observed at the frontier. His gift for navigation began when he learned to read the night sky, and later the compass, from a retired Dutch sailor stranded in a frontier trading post. By his late 20s, Gina worked sporadically at Cape Town harbor, mending sails, fixing rigging, and ferrying supplies to incoming ships. European captains quickly learned he was the man to call if a vessel needed quick repairs before dangerous voyages. The ship and the storm. One day, a British merchant vessel docked in Cape Town for urgent repairs after nearly capsizing in heavy seas. The ship's owners persuaded, and subtly coerced, Gina to join the crew as a temporary hand, promising high pay and quick return. But Gina sensed it was not entirely voluntary. He had been hired under terms he could not refuse. Among the passengers was Eleanor Whitford, a 19-year-old Englishwoman, recently orphaned after her parents died of fever in India. She had been sent to live with relatives in Cape Town but was now bound for Mauritius to join a merchant family. Days into the voyage, a violent storm struck between South Africa and Madagascar. Gina's skill at the helm saved the ship from immediate destruction, but the vessel's main mast snapped, and currents carried it far east, past Mauritius and deep into uncharted waters. The wreck and the rescue. At dawn, the ship was driven onto a jagged reef near a small, volcanic island, black cliffs rising above turquoise waters. The hull cracked, and the crew scrambled for the lifeboats. In the chaos, Eleanor was thrown overboard. Without hesitation, Gina plunged into the swirling water, dragging her, and the young son of a cruel overseer who had mistreated Gina aboard ship, to safety on the beach. This act shocked Eleanor. He had risked his life for the child of his oppressor. In that moment, her heart shifted. Love in no man's land. Over the weeks that followed, only a handful of survivors remained, most either perished at sea or left in a small dinghy that was never seen again. Gina and Eleanor learned to live off the island's abundance, tropical fruit groves, wild goats, freshwater springs. It was in this isolation that the barriers of race, class, and colonial law dissolved. The loss of her parents, the same tragedy that had once been her despair, became the strange, divine thread that bound her to Gina. He taught her to fish, to navigate by stars, and to name the constellations in Amakosa. She in turn taught him to read English poetry from the salt-stained books she had carried in her trunk. They named the place Dawn Ridge, for the way the sun rose each morning over the black volcanic ridges, turning them gold. Gina was a traditionalist who honored the ways of his ancestors, while Eleanor remained a Christian, drawing comfort from her faith. The legacy. Gina and Eleanor's union became the root of Dawn Ridge's mixed heritage community, a blend of Xhosa, English, and other stranded seafarers who found the island in later years. The people developed their own customs, drawing from African proverbs, European maritime knowledge, and island survival skills. Though their home was beautiful, it was also remote. Trade with the outside world came rarely, mostly via fishing boats from Mauritius. But as the years passed, younger generations dreamed of seeing the lands Gina once spoke of, especially South Africa, where their Xhosa kin lived. Years later, the year of the prophecy. Decades had passed since Gina and Eleanor had founded Dawn Ridge. The island had grown into a small but thriving community. Fishermen, farmers, and traders making the most of their volcanic soil and rich coastal waters. Before his death, Gina had gathered the villagers beneath the tallest ridge at sunrise. His voice, aged yet unbroken, carried across the wind. In a year when the moon will be full and the sun will burn red at dawn, a child will be born, Kwelanga, the sunrise. This child will bring wealth, happiness, and greener pastures for our village. But as surely as the sun brings light, it will also cast shadows. She will walk between worlds, and the truth she carries will divide as much as it will unite. The prophecy was recorded in memory and whispered across generations, but no one knew when it would come to pass. Grace's marriage. Now, in the present year, the one some elders murmured might be the year, Grace lived far from the carefree days of her youth. Her marriage to Michael, a man from a wealthy and cunning family, was a union of shadows. Michael had never paid Ilobola, the customary Kosa bride price, to Grace's parents. His family, entangled in an ambitious business scheme that promised them riches, had neither the resources nor the willingness to honor tradition. They needed a wife in the household, not for love, but to strengthen their public image and give their plans the appearance of stability. When Grace, infatuated and hopeful, agreed to marry Michael without her family's blessing, she believed love would heal the rift. Instead, it became the first betrayal, one against her own parents, who saw her departure as a wound to their dignity. The infidelity and isolation. It wasn't long before Grace learned the truth of her husband's heart. Michael was cold and distant, often gone for days under the pretext of business. His infidelity was no secret. Whispers reached her ears about Mary, a bold and ambitious woman who visited the house late at night. Mary would enter discreetly, never to Grace's room, but to the far side of the house where Michael stayed when he claimed to be working late. Grace could hear faint laughter, hushed voices, and sometimes the creak of the old floorboards that betrayed their presence. The cruelty cut deeper when Grace realized this arrangement had the blessing, even encouragement, of Michael's family. Every member except one, Elder Samkalo, Michael's quiet uncle, who treated Grace with rare kindness. Anne, a young woman from the poor family next door, often visited Grace when she had been left alone with piles of laundry to wash at the river. Anne was the first to hint at the truth, quietly telling Grace she had seen Michael and Mary together, hoping to open Grace's eyes. The second prophecy. One night, as Grace sat by the kitchen fire kneading dough, Elder Samkalo approached her. His face was lined with age, but his eyes burned with something other than pity. "They think you are barren," he said softly, "but I have seen otherwise. You will bear a child. It will not be in the way they expect, nor in the time they think. But when it comes, it will shake this household, and perhaps the village." Grace didn't know whether to believe him. The words reminded her of the old tale her grandmother had told her, of Gina's prophecy, long before her birth. Dreams sacrificed. In her heart, Grace carried another vision, a dream of opening a school in Dawnridge, where children could learn letters, numbers, and the ways of the land without being bound by superstition or greed. She had even begun sketching its layout on scraps of parchment, imagining rows of bright-eyed students. But the dream withered under the weight of her reality. Michael's family demanded she devote herself entirely to their business scheme, assisting with correspondence, managing the home's appearances, and serving as the dutiful wife who asked no questions. The school plans were tucked into the bottom of a wooden chest, forgotten under folded blankets. Accepted as the wife who could not bear children. Michael's family had promised to accept Grace, but the truth was bitter. They only valued her because they believed she could not conceive. To them, she was the perfect placeholder, a woman whose womb posed no threat to their inheritance plans. Grace, caught between the shame of her parents' disappointment and the suffocating control of her husband's household, clung to the small acts of defiance she could manage, baking bread at midnight, humming the songs of her childhood, and holding on to the faint echo of Elder Samkalo's prophecy. The conflicted meeting. The villagers gathered beneath the sprawling branches of the ancient baobab tree, shadows deepening as dusk settled over Dawnridge. The air hummed with tension and whispered fears. The prophecy, once a distant legend, had become a fierce matter of debate. Mary, proud and radiant despite her secret, stood near the center. Her family's wealth and power had long shaped the village's fate. Many declared Mary's unborn child the promised one, destined to bring prosperity. But rumors circled in corners. Mary's pregnancy was a scandal, the child fathered by another man. No one dared voice this openly, but the shadow hung heavy. At the outskirts of the crowd stood Anna, pale and silent. Wrapped in threadbare cloth, she avoided the eyes of the powerful families, knowing well their readiness to crush any threat to their claim on the prophecy. Her frailty was stark, her family was poor and voiceless. Fear gripped her like a second skin. The air grew thick with heated voices. Some elders spoke with certainty that Mary's child would fulfill the prophecy. Others muttered that true destiny was not for sale, that prophecy could not be twisted by wealth or power. As night fell, the great chief Ezekiel raised his hand for silence. His face was grave, a heavy shadow behind his eyes. The debate had grown fierce and bitter, and no clear answer had come. But then came news that changed everything. Anna was barely alive, her body ravaged by a difficult birth. Kwelanga, her child, was born by a miracle operation. Anna had died in the process, and the baby's legs had emerged first, before the head. The chief was torn. Ancient traditions clashed with whispers of new faith. Some of the traditionalists said Kwelanga was a curse, Ukashona Kwelanga, the sunset, the bringing of an ending rather than a beginning. Others, the village's growing Christian group, called her Yukafuma Kwelanga, the sunrise, a symbol of hope and new life. Confused and desperate for guidance, Chief Ezekiel summoned a group of magicians who had come with settlers from distant India long ago. These men, cloaked in mystery, had lived among the villagers for decades, blending their own rites with the village's customs. The chief explained the dilemma. The magicians said they had received a message through their spirits, that the answer could be revealed by chance, a coin toss. Heads would mean birth and light, the prophecy fulfilled, tails would mean death and shadow, the curse confirmed. The coin was brought forward, shining in the torchlight. The villagers held their breath as the magician tossed it high. It spun through the air, gleaming like a small sun, then landed on the dusty ground, head side up. Cheers erupted. The Christians cried out with joy, declaring this a sign that Kwelanga was the chosen child, the true sunrise. Mary smiled tightly, trying to hide her frustration as whispers of victory spread. But then a stern voice rose from the elders, a traditionalist man with eyes sharp as flint. "Is this still true?" he challenged, "if the child was not born the usual way? The baby's legs came first, before the head. How can the sign mean birth when she entered the world backwards? Does this not make her a shadow and not the light?" A heavy silence fell, broken only by Grace's steady voice. "Kwelanga's birth was hard and different, but she lives. The gods have spared her for a reason. We cannot bind fate to old rules alone." Mary's eyes flashed. "Grace, you twist the truth. This child's birth defies our customs, she is an ill omen, a threat to the village's future." Grace met her gaze without fear. "Mary, your child's birth is shrouded in lies and power games. Kwelanga is the true hope, born of sacrifice and love. You would deny that because it suits you." The tension crackled like a storm ready to break. The villagers looked to Chief Ezekiel, waiting for his judgment. He sighed deeply, torn between tradition and the signs before him. "We will watch and wait. Kwelanga lives, but her path is uncertain. The village must stand united or fall divided." As the meeting ended, whispers spread like wildfire, some hopeful, some fearful, but all aware that the coming days would decide the fate of Dawnridge. The next morning, under a heavy sky, Chief Ezekiel called the village to gather once more beneath the ancient baobab. His face was worn, his eyes clouded with doubt. He spoke slowly, his voice carrying the weight of sleepless nights spent in prayer and torment. "If Kwelanga is a curse," he began, "then her life is death for us all. More souls will be lost, more families broken. We hope to build a school, to bring wisdom and peace to Dawnridge. But of what use is knowledge if sorrow follows? If she is truly the light, she will bring these blessings and more." The villagers hung on his words, hearts pounding with fear and hope entwined. "But her life is a risk," he continued, voice heavy. "If she dies, we may find peace. If she lives, the path will be difficult, but wisdom will come. After a long pause, the chief's decision cut through the murmurs like a blade. I overrule all previous counsel. Tonight, Kwelanga must be thrown into the river. We will test the will of the spirits. If no sign or message comes by dawn, we will let the waters decide. A hush fell, broken only by the sharp voice of Grace. Why must we sacrifice an innocent soul for the gain of many? The child knows nothing of this. Is it just to lose one life to save thousands? Her words rang clear and fierce. She stepped forward, eyes blazing with defiance. Mary, my king, I swear by the moon and stars, Michael is the man who can build the school we dream of. I will support him fully. Kwelanga has no royal blood, no influence. Her existence is a danger we cannot afford. The chief nodded solemnly, affirming the harsh decree. Tonight, Kwelanga will be laid to rest by the riverbank. If the spirits send no sign before 5 o'clock tomorrow, the child will be cast into the waters. Grace returned home, her heart shattered and heavy with despair. She knew now she was worthless to Michael's family, a pawn to be discarded. That evening, a poor woman from the outskirts, known only as Night, came to Grace's door. She spoke softly but with urgency. I plan to rescue Kwelanga, she said. But understand, starting anew will be hard. Poverty, loneliness, and struggle await beyond these hills. You may have to accept the life of a second wife, a shadow among others. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Her parents were gone, their voices silent. Perhaps it was time to accept the role fate had given her. To become a good wife, no matter the cost. Before dawn, as the village still slept, Kwelanga was gone. The river's whisper carried the secret of her absence, and the night held its breath.